Welcome. This is part two of Jan's adventure in Europe from early May to early August, summer of 2022. We started out in Holland and we visited several bike friendly cities and towns. Uh, we finished part one in Freiburg, Germany, in the Vauban neighborhood. So what we're going to do here is start a screen share. We're going to start with Paris. That's what we're going to pick up where we left off, Paris, France. First, let's just take a look at the overall map of where this trip was. I was gone for 3 months, and I did start up here in Groningen and Houghton. We already visited Strasbourg and Freiburg, the Vauban neighborhood. We're going to go to Paris. That's where we begin this episode. And after Paris, we're going to go down this way. I'm going to show a few pictures of Orléans, and I'll show a few pictures of Tours. And then we're going to go to Abilly, where my next door neighbor Bill now lives. We'll spend a couple days in Abilly and then taking the train down to Bordeaux and to the French coast and the Vellodyssee. This is a bikeway that I biked on for a couple of days in southwest France to Biarritz, and probably around Biarritz, somewhere in here. That's as far as we're going to go today. That's about an hour's worth of slideshow. So let's zoom in a little bit more. In France, of course, Paris, Tours, Orléans, Tours, and then Bill's place. Yeah, this is just a little bit more detail right here. Bordeaux, going into southwest France. And then our next slideshow, we'll start probably with Barcelona. Okay. Where? Okay. Okay. This is Paris, a little bit even closer up. This is the Seine River right here. It goes right through Paris. And I stayed a couple miles from the center part of Paris. And again, these orange lines are where I did my biking. So you can see 2 miles. Paris is a pretty big city, and it is a grand city. So I stayed with some people here in this north of the Seine River. This is the train station where I arrived to Paris, and I biked here. And of course, I did what most people do when you go to Paris. You go see the sights, and there are a lot of sights to see along the Seine. And of course, my bike experience is sort of highlighted with my visit to Paris. Okay. So here's my first view of Paris. This is coming into the train station. And like any coming into a train station, is kind of gritty. And that's exactly what this view looking out the window of the train is, a pretty gritty view right here. But when I came out of the train station, the Gare d'Est, the East train station, I came out of the train station. I had directions for where I needed to go, and I just stepped right into the fray. uh, Paris is making an effort to become a more bike friendly, a more walkable city, and it's overlaying bike infrastructure onto a convoluted old city with twisty streets, and they fit bikeways really kind of anywhere that they can. It's a little bit rough, but this is sure a lot better than biking in the street. Um, Congratulations to Paris for making this effort. Absolutely. Took me about something like 20 minutes to bike from the train station to my Servas host. Once again, I stayed with Servas host. Servas is an international peace organization. So this is the balcony from where I stayed. And I'll mention this little area on the street down here, but you can see this is urban living. People live in apartments. You can see a lot of different architecture here. So the first day I was there, I went out and did some bike riding. And this is a park on the way towards the Arc du Triomphe, and beautiful parks. As I've mentioned before, there's not so much private space, but there's a lot of public space. And this is a one of many parks in Paris. People on benches, people walking, of course, people checking their mobile phones all the time, just like they do here. So this is a little bit further along the way towards the Arc du Triomphe and bicycle infrastructure. Um, this is where they're fitting bicycles, and there are a lot of people bike riding as well, but just putting bikeways where they can go. And this is another kind of a boulevard. You would have the road on both sides of a pedestrian area. You can see the planted trees, and there's even some benches here, and they fit a bikeway into that pedestrian zone between the lanes of traffic. And before too long, this is where I came to the Arc du Triomphe in Paris, certainly one of the major landmarks. It is big. It's really big. And a lot of people there. Of course, this is one of the primary tourist destinations in Paris. Lots of people posing. I saw a video one time of the Tour de France, and this is where they end up. The Tour de France, they circle around the Arc de Triomphe, a bumpy ride because this is cobblestone streets right here. This is near the Arc de Triomphe. Uh, the reason I took this picture is this is a relatively small street, but you can see all these locations where restaurants have built out into the street. They're sitting areas. This is partly because of COVID, but this is a good example. There would have been cars parking where you see this restaurant sitting areas here. I asked a fellow at a restaurant here, how was it that they have more space for the restaurant? And he was very enthusiastic. He says it's great. It's wonderful to have more space outside. And actually, you can see a cargo bike right there. A couple blocks away, this is the Champs-Élysées. I don't know how to pronounce it. Sorry. But this is the main thoroughfare in Paris. It runs from the Arc du Triomphe to Place de la Concorde and eventually to the Louvre, the wonderful art museum. This is the most well-known thoroughfare. There's cars back over this way, lots of pedestrians, lots of outdoor cafes. This right here is an art museum along the way. I went inside. This is just beautiful. It's just the architecture, the ornate, the paintings. It's just a really beautiful public location right here. What can you say? Look at the floor, the mosaics. This is just awesome culture right here. A little bit further along, uh, Paris just has huge open spaces, huge public open spaces. And there's lots of chairs. I just sat in the shade here, even though this was the middle of May, the temperatures were still warm. I'm guessing this day it was probably 83, 85. It was warm enough you wanted to sit in the shade. And of course, there's the Eiffel Tower off in the distance. I would eventually go to the Eiffel Tower another day. But grandeur, my gosh, it is just a long ways from one place to another. Uh, uh, Big promenade. There's my bicycle right there. Lots of benches and little cafes all along here. And this would be the Louvre, big green open space, big public garden, but this would be the Louvre back over here. And these characteristic French architecture. Wow, it's pretty grand. I did not go to the Louvre, but I did go to the Seine River. And uh, this view right here, only a couple of years ago, would have been for cars. You can see this is a tunnel, a street here, and off to the right of where you see these cars is the Seine River. And this would have been an access to a street right along the river that used to be for cars. It's not for cars anymore. It's prime real estate. It's beautiful along the Seine River, and it used to be an area occupied by cars, but it's not anymore. These bollards keep the cars from going down through this tunnel, and it's a fairly long tunnel. And within about a quarter of a mile, you come out right next to the river. This is right along the Seine River. You can see the water here. And again, this would have been a thoroughfare for cars. It's not, it's a bikeway now. That's what it should be. This is a wonderful way to go from one part of Paris to another. This goes for miles along the Seine River. Then there's water. This is a water fountain here. And there are food carts, interesting art structures. It's really, really pretty. And this used to be for cars right here. The mayor, Anne Hidalgo, mayor of Paris, is making efforts to make Paris more walkable, more friendly to bikes and pedestrians, improve air quality. It's a big task. And of course, along the Seine River, this is Notre Dame, the world famous cathedral. And this is the reconstruction. You may recall a couple years ago, there was a huge fire. These used to be big steeples here, and they're being repaired. So that is hard to miss along the Seine River. It is huge. And of course, also along the Seine River, barges. Really love these barges. I showed a couple of barges in the previous slideshow. This is fairly common in places in Europe, cities that have waterways and rivers. Somebody's living on this barge all along here. They're kind of a little bit of a European counterpart to some places like I know Seattle and Portland have homes on the water. They're actually floating on the water. This is kind of the European counterpart to that. Another view of the Seine. There's my bicycle. Of course, I have my bicycle with me all the time. That's what gives me mobility. I could go where I wanted. I love to ride the bicycle. I love biking in an urban place. So I just hung out here for a little while. I bought this ice cream and I just sat up here on the top of this wall here, and it drops off on the far side. You don't want to fall down there. It's actually quite a ways down to water level, but I just chilled out here with some ice cream. It was really nice. And then this area, I think this is the Latin Quarter. This would have been an older part of Paris right here. You can see how narrow the street is, and this is pretty much car free right here. But hotels and restaurants, very nice. I enjoy walk my bike through here. But this is the older part of Paris. And I eventually did make it to the Eiffel Tower. I didn't go up to the Eiffel Tower. I didn't go up. Just too many people. I just didn't want to wait in line for a couple of hours. But you can see the architecture. When was this built? I think maybe like 1890. There was some kind of World's Fair. Just the engineering here is just unbelievable that this was built so long ago. I did have a little bit of a bicycle need to find a bike shop. This is a Paris bike shop, and I had to have my chain replaced. Not a big deal, but this fellow here spoke pretty good English. I talked with him a little bit. He had only had this bike shop for a couple of years. He bought it just before COVID arrived. I said, was that good timing? And he said, yeah, the bike shop's doing pretty well. So he replaced the chain, and a very nice guy. And I was on my way. This is just simply a street view of Paris. You have cars, you have people walking across the street. It's irregular. It's not like this is a nice, simple grid. Paris is not a nice, simple grid. It's a pretty chaotic city, and there's just cars everywhere. And the effort to improve the condition of bicycles takes a lot of effort. There's just cars all over the place. And of course, there's people walking all over the place. This is not any downtown area. I would imagine there's scenes like this covering square miles in Paris. And this is another view, the bike lane. Quite a few people riding bicycles. It's not like Amsterdam or Copenhagen, but there are a lot of people who ride bicycles. And this is my host family I stayed with, and they were really, really nice. We had some good conversations. Celine rides her bicycle to work, and they told me that when they go on vacation, they don't even rent a car. When they go to ski or go to the mountains or go to the coast, they take the train. They don't even rent a car when they arrive to their location. They're totally public transportation. They don't have a car. Their daughter, just a darling. She was just wonderful. So I had a great time staying with my host family. And but after a couple, 2 or 3 days, it was time to go. So this slider is a little bit of an issue here. Let me, okay. Okay, this is the morning I left Paris. One of the few days it was actually raining. But what you can see here is uh, a bike lane in the works. I think for this street here, there's really nowhere they can put the bike lane other than the middle of the street. Some bicycle engineer designers would say this is the least good place to put a bike lane, but they really don't have anywhere else. The sidewalks are too narrow here. There's no boulevard. So this is a bike lane in the early going right here. So I made my way to the train station, and this is when I moved towards southwest France. I take the train to Orléans and Tours, and then to Abilly, where my friend Bill lives. So that's what we're doing right here, going to visit Bill. So the train stops in a couple of places. I had to make some connections. And the first place I went to is Orleans, a medium-sized city. Here's my bike right here. Of course, by this time the rain had stopped and it turned into a really nice day. But this would be the central plaza, the center of Orleans. And of course, you have outdoor dining. You have some plants here that sort of define the pedestrian space here. So I biked around for a while. I had a little bit of time between trains. I love it. I had my bike. I could not have walked to see all what I saw. I just love having the bicycle. But this would be a little bit of a glimpse of what architecture. I'm sure this place here dates back 400 or 500 years. You can just sort of squint your eyes and sort of remove the cars and uh, and add, maybe some donkeys and uh, and pedestrians. Uh, this just gives you a little bit of a glimpse of what life might have been like 300, 400, 500 years ago. This street is gradual downhill. There's a river down here. This is a more modern, up-to-date part of town. You can see this is a tramway. There's a tramway goes right through the middle of town. Look at this. There's just hardly even any cars at all. They're probably restricted in this area. But once again, this is a typical European city. You have businesses, commercial down here. This is where people live up here on these balconies. It's really quite nice. Another view of Orleans, you can see the Ukrainian flags to support the effort in Ukraine. Once again, these are tramways, and this is a cathedral. Of course, every town has its big cathedral, its big church. This is particularly an intersection of the tram. Here's a tram right here. There's people walking. This is downtown. There just aren't so many cars here. Orleans has an impressive tram network. So I returned to the train station and I got on the train and the slider is, my gosh, this slider is kind of not a very functional slider. Okay, let's just go up here. It moves by itself. Come on. The slider has a mind of its own. Okay, grab it. I was on the train, and of course, I look out the window, and this to me looks like a nuclear power plant. France is very much generates way over half of its electricity by nuclear power. And this is just what I happen to see out the window. So my next stop is Tours, a little bit closer to where Bill lives. And once again, this is where my train stopped. I spent an hour biking around Tours. Look at uh, this architecture. I'm sure these buildings are 400 years old, cross timber architecture. It's pretty typical. You see this a lot in Europe. And of course, here is the outdoor cafe. But this would be the old town. No cars here. Just once again, sort of remove the few modern features here, and this could be back in the medieval period. Just beautiful architecture. And here is another view of Tours, narrow old town streets. and somebody biking along here. And at this point, I am heading out of town. What I decided to do from uh, from Tours was to bike the rest of the way to Abbey, to where Bill lives. It was about 30 miles. I wanted to bike. So that's what I'm up to. I'm heading out of town, and it was a beautiful bike ride. This is the countryside there, south of Tours, moving towards southwest France. I'm biking. It's just a very quiet road, very little traffic, some gradual uphill and downhill. You can see a church steeple here. It's just really beautiful countryside. There's lots of castles in this area. There's bikeways. France has a lot of designated bike areas, and actually, I followed one of those for part of my bike ride to Abbey. But this is somewhat the countryside looks like. So this is Bill's house. Bill and Marie Christine were next door neighbors here in Eugene, and Marie Christine is French. And uh, about 3 years ago, they decided they were going to move to France. And Bill told me that they looked all over in France for a place to live. They did want to be fairly close to Marie Christine's mother. This is what they found. Actually, this house is rebuilt, upgraded. They did a lot of remodeling to this place. They're on the edge of a small, even like a village. Couldn't really call Abbey really a town. It's pretty small. You can go uh, buy a croissant, and there is a hair salon. It seems like those are the two most important businesses in any French village. But they did a lot of work on the property. It's about an acre, and this is looking towards the north. So the property stretches back behind me right here. This slider. So this is looking in the other direction. Uh, the house is behind me here, and this is a big yard, and there's actually kind of a creek. It's not big enough to be a river. It's very slow moving back here. We'll see another picture that includes that. But of course, Bill and Marie Christine are very much into gardening, and what they've done in the 2 years they've been here, they planted lots of trees. They have grapes growing. It is a wonderful example of putting their property to work. They are going to be having a lot of agriculture there as the years go by. And this is the creek. Bill said is clean enough to go swimming. He fishes here. I put up my hammock here. This was great. I was so glad to be outside. This was to a large degree my first being out in the country on my trip. I've done some bike riding up to this point, which was not in an urban place, but this was the most rural location I had been in, really kind of my entire time in Europe. This is like into my third week in Europe right here. So I had a very nice time with Bill. We talked. He seemed to be in good spirits, and he's speaks a little bit of French now. And the day I left, we went to um, the nearby, actually a town, Descartes, about 3 miles away, and it's market day in Descartes. This is not a tourist destination. This is just a small town out in the country in the southwestern part of France, and it's market day. You can see these chairs aren't normally there. These probably are. That's probably a restaurant, but you would have a a rotating set of towns where it would be market day, and all the vendors who are up this street would go from town to town over a period of a week. So I think they do this once every week here in Descartes. And this is a vegetable market. There's other products too. It's not just vegetables. There's clothes, there's hardware. It's really quite a market. And of course, this is veggie. This would be biologic. That's biologie. Maybe that's how they say it in French, but basically organic. There are organic growers who market their produce as being grown without chemicals. There's Bill, and this is the vegetable part of the market. So it was time to go. I biked to meet Bill here in Descartes because it was market day for him. And I left Descartes, and my destination was further south and west towards the Vellodyssee. And this is the bridge that goes over this river. That may be the Loire. I'm not sure what river, but the market is back up this way. And this is just beautiful. There's no franchise food place here. This would look very much like this hundreds of years ago. It's just really charming. That's just what you have to say about it. It's just charming. It's nice to be this slider. Come on. Okay. So the Vellodyssee. I took the train further south and west, and it was late in the day by the time I reached this the town. I don't remember the name of the town, but it's on the coast, and this is where I intersected with the bikeway that starts in Normandy. Um, I was trying to find a campground that somebody told me about. Lots of towns have campgrounds, uh, tourist destinations. There's a big camping culture in Europe. I couldn't find the campground, and one couple, I asked for directions. They got out their phone, and she said to me in English, "There's a big storm coming this way." She got out her phone, and we looked at the radar, and there was a big storm coming in my direction. She said, "You don't have very much time to find a place to get ready for the storm because the weather advisory, just like here, they have a weather advisory: wind, lightning, heavy rain." Well, I never did find the campground. But what I did find as I'm wandering around in this town was an area of trees, a little wooded area. There's houses along the margins of this wooded area, and I said, I just got to make camping like in town. But this is a pretty discreet place. I couldn't see any houses from here. But as I was setting up my hammock, it did start to rain. And of course, I have this tarp. I'm prepared for rain. It was lightning. It was windy. I stayed pretty dry. It was pretty good. I had a good night's sleep. So the next morning, I uh, I started out my bikeway on the Vellodyssee, and this is part of it here. It's not like it's all along the water. You're going through towns, but nice biking, welcoming infrastructure. This picnic table, I stopped to have some lunch, and there's my bike. and I have all my food out like this. And these two women are walking by. They're pedestrians. They're using the bikeway too, and they just stopped and were curious, and we talked. And of course, they spoke uh, pretty good English. I don't speak any French, but we just had a really nice conversation. They were interested to know where I was from and where I was going. So that was it's just so much fun to meet local people, and they just live nearby. So a little bit later that day, I'm going through a town, and this obviously is a school. It's a big playground area. Nothing very unusual about that. But as I was looking over to see what they were doing when I first came into view, I was amazed. These kids are out here doing ultimate frisbee. They're doing ultimate frisbee. They're learning how to play ultimate frisbee. So I stopped and watched for a while. These are probably middle school kids. I had my frisbee with me. I thought, do I want to go out and kind of impose myself? I didn't. I decided just to watch for a little bit. But um, this is one of the few times on my trip I actually saw people throwing the frisbee. I was hoping to throw the frisbee. I did a little bit, and there is ultimate frisbee in Europe. They have ultimate frisbee leagues and tournaments. I just didn't connect with that very much, but that's what these kids are up to here is ultimate frisbee. A little bit further, and I'm following the bikeway, and it gives. There's usually pretty good signage, and at this particular incident, there was a sign that said "detour." The bridge is closed. Go this way. And I ran into these two guys. They're both French, and we tried to find our way, the alternate route, and we kind of the signage kind of evaporated, and we were left on our own trying to find our way uh, to the destination. And I don't think this was even the detour, and it got even worse than this. We wandered around in the woods for the better part of an hour, and finally found our way. We had to cross some railroad tracks and some rough ground to exit this this sort of detour here. But they were really nice, and we had a good time. And eventually, uh, I relocated where I needed to be along the Vellodyssee. The Vellodyssee sometimes is a separate bikeway right next to the highway, and there's other people doing this tour as well. These are a couple of French persons, and they are really geared up. Uh, and these are not electric bikes either. They are loaded. The really nice trikes and really nice people too. Again, they speak very good English, and they're on their way towards Spain, but they are a lot of weight. I caught up with them going up this little hill, and they were barely at walking speed going up this hill. But I met a lot of people along this bikeway. It's a very popular place. This was not the busy season yet either. I'm sure there are times when there's lots more bike riders, but you also go through some towns. And I took this picture just to show that this is a supermarket, grocery store, and it's got a big parking lot. It's got the trolleys over here. It's got all the cars. It's got the alter abled parking. It's just like it is here. And you go into the store, and it's just as modern as anything that we have here, and all the fruit and vegetables and products and digital checkout is all the same over there. They've got everything there that we have here. So I met this guy. He was on his own bike ride, and as what is fairly common when you're out doing this sort of an activity, you run into people and you might be going in the same direction. So you ride together for a while. So we teamed up and had some nice conversation. Stopped for a coffee. I actually drank some coffee here, and we biked together for a while. And then there came a point where we departed. When you're out biking, you tend to go at a speed at a rate that is comfortable for you, and that means that even people that you run into may be going at a different rate. So we said, so long, good luck. And I continued on my way. And this is one of the parts of the bikeway that you actually do see the Atlantic Ocean. It's really pretty. Of course, that's the Atlantic Ocean. Oh, jeez. This slider, I swear, I haven't had this kind of issue with this slider before. Stay there. Okay, and once again, we're on the bikeway. There's a lot of pine forest in southwestern France. And sometimes the bikeway is near the ocean, sometimes it's a little distant. This was a small coastal tourist village that was about a half mile from the bikeway. I just took this small detour and came to the beach. And of course, this is still mid-May. It's not tourist season yet. I'm sure when it's tourist season, there's lots of people here. But what it did have was a nice deck right here next to this building. And I decided I'd have some breakfast right here with a nice view, a little bit breezy. And eventually I did come to Biarritz. Biarritz is a city in the very southwestern corner of France. And it's a pretty flashy place, actually. Biarritz is a place that has a reputation for a bit of wealth and also its shoreline in town. I stayed in a campground here, so it was a little ways away from where the center of town was. And this was late in the day. Also, you can see the Atlantic, the waves coming in, the lights are coming on. Another view, very rocky. It's a rocky coastline with these little small beaches like this, but interesting architecture and interesting built structures that fit within that rocky coastline. You can see this is a little bit older here. This is something new right here. Pretty bike friendly. I could ride a bike all along here. This is another view of Biarritz. This is getting a little bit closer to the center of Biarritz. I've seen pictures of this on the internet before, this bridge and this kind of causeway that goes out to this little rocky, couldn't really call it an island, this little rock out here, out in the bay. And this is going to that little rocky uh, uh, sea stack out here in the water. Beautiful. Oh, jeez, come on. Okay. And by now it's pretty dark. And this was just empty. The center of town is just upslope, some steps and some ramps uh, upslope just a little bit. behind me. And I am sure that in the summertime, this is a lungo mare. This would be just packed with people in the summertime. It wasn't cold, but definitely there aren't very many people here. But one of my favorite features in visiting towns was the coastal, uh, where human activity is right there on the edge of the water. That's been a recurring theme my entire trip. We'll see a lot of that in future slideshows. In Italian, the term is a lungo mare, along the water, along the ocean, the sea. So this is in Biarritz. So I stayed a night in Biarritz. Actually had a flat. I had to fix a flat. I had two flats in my trip. That's pretty good. That next day, my plan was to move towards Barcelona, and I had to go through Spain. Biarritz is right there on the border with Spain. So it's kind of odd navigating. The train connections were not really very good. I actually had to ride my bike across the border into Spain to a train station to start my train ride that would eventually, hopefully, take me to Barcelona. Well, it became a little awkward with the train schedule, and I didn't realize that I had to put my bicycle in a box to put it on this particular train. So I became a little bit uh, um, sidetracked here in this medium-sized Spanish city. This is Victoria, and actually, what you can see here is in the central part of Victoria, a very nice car-free pedestrian zone. This is downtown Victoria, but I also found out that the next train that I needed wasn't until the next day. I had to find a box to put my bike in to take that train. The regulations are a little bit different in different countries. I wasn't prepared for this. I had to have a box. I found a box. It was really quite an effort to find a bike box. My Spanish is not so great, but I eventually found a bike shop and got a box. But I had to keep my box. Where was I going to stay that night? Uh, I went back to the train station. I had the box and the bike. Was that awkward carrying a bike box with a bicycle? Um, what I eventually came up with was I had to do some urban camping. This is where I spent the night. I couldn't just stay in the waiting room of the train station. The train station closed. But next to the train station was a commercial area that somebody in the train station said you can find a place to sleep in this commercial area. So what I ended up doing, there's my bike. I'm behind this architectural structure right here. I slept on top of my box. The train left fairly early in the morning, and this is not the way I liked to camp. Nobody bothered me. I slept on the train box. In the next morning, I got up and took all this back down into the train station. I had to take the wheels off the bicycle to make it fit inside the box. I eventually did that. I put that all on the train, and it eventually did work out okay. So this is the train. This I ended up going to Madrid of all things, a little bit out of the way, but that's what I had to do. And this is actually the train from Madrid to Barcelona. And this is a fast train. You can't see with this photo, but up here, it gives information about the train. This train was going over 250 kilometers an hour. That's about 150 miles an hour is what this train was doing. This was a fast train. And for much of Europe, if you're on a fast train, you have to put your bicycle in a box. I'm not sure exactly why, but it all worked out. And I did take this train to Barcelona. Let's just do a little quick. The slider. Oh, jeez, the slider. I don't know why. Okay. We're going to end this particular episode right here because I've got a lot of pictures of Barcelona. Here's a preview of Barcelona. I love Barcelona. I fell in love with Barcelona. This is the center part of Barcelona. Shows where I went on a bicycle. I went a lot of places on a bicycle. Here's the scale. It's not so big, but Barcelona is probably my favorite city in Europe. I'd have to say it's really bike friendly. It's really well maintained. It is an affluent place. And also, it is where I had a specific interest in visiting these super illas, super blocks, the Barcelona urban mobility plan. When we're talking about pushing back on cars, Barcelona has one of the best stories of pushing back on cars. We're going to take a closer look at that in the next episode. And I stayed with my friend Tony up here in the Gracia neighborhood. What a wonderful visit that was. There's La Sagrada Familia, the Gaudi architectural. You could either call it a masterpiece or a monstrosity. We'll take a look at that. Uh, the beach, La Rambla, St. John, Barcelona is just a beautiful city. So that's where we're going to start for episode 3. This is the finish of episode 2 right here. Thanks for joining us, and I will let you know when I have episode 3 ready. That's it. Okay. Thanks. I will be contacting with updates about this exciting series of slideshows, my trip in Europe.